said it quietly. That was the part that stayed with me. Not a shout, not a drunk stumble, just a calm, flat voice, like he was talking to someone who worked for him. This isn't really your space anymore, Judith. We've made it ours. I was standing in my own kitchen. The kitchen where I'd made 32 years of Christmas morning pancakes. The kitchen where I'd held my son when he cried after his father's funeral. The kitchen with the blue tile backsplash I'd picked out myself at a salvage shop in Guelph because I wanted something nobody else had. I didn't answer him. I turned around and started washing a cup that was already clean. But I want to go back to the beginning, because if I don't explain how it started, you'll wonder the same thing I wondered every night for almost 2 years. How does a woman let this happen in her own home? My husband Ray passed in the spring of 2021. Heart attack sudden. Nobody saw it coming, including his cardiologist. We'd been married 34 years, lived in the same house in Stratford, Ontario since 1993, a 2-story brick house on a quiet street with a maple tree out front that Ray planted the year our son was born. That maple was 30 years old when Ray died. I used to sit on the porch and look at it like it was a person. Our son, my son. I'll call him my son throughout, because that's what he is. Whatever happened after was 31 when his father passed. He'd been living in Kitchener with his girlfriend, who I will call my daughter-in-law because by the time things fell apart, they had married. And that title is the one I have to use to make sense of this story. Her name was Claudine. That's what I'll call her. Claudine was 30, worked in marketing, and had a way of speaking that made every sentence sound like the beginning of a negotiation. She wasn't rude when I first met her. She was polished. Very polished. The kind of polish that takes effort. The kind that slips when someone doesn't think you're watching. My son, I'll call him Nate, it suits him, was sweet and lost after his father died. They'd been close in the quiet way that men sometimes are. Not a lot of words, but a lot of Saturday mornings in the garage, tinkering. Nate didn't know how to grieve out loud. He went back to Kitchener and threw himself into work, and I worried about him the way mothers worry, constantly, silently from a distance. 6 months after Ray passed, Nate called me on a Tuesday night. His voice had that particular thinness that I recognized from when he was 17 and had gotten into trouble at school. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something." The business he'd started, a small HVAC installation company, was struggling. 2 big contracts had fallen through. He'd taken out a business loan and was behind on payments. He and Claudine were renting a 2-bedroom in Kitchener for $2,400 a month, and the math wasn't working anymore. "How much do you need?" I asked. There was a pause. "We were thinking," he said, and I noticed the "we." "Maybe we could come stay with you, just for 6 months, until the business gets back on track." I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Relief. I was 62 years old, rattling around a 4-bedroom house alone, still sleeping on my side of the bed out of habit. I wanted my son near me. I wanted to cook for someone. I wanted the house to sound like a house again. "Of course," I said. "Come home." They arrived on a Saturday in November with a moving truck. I'd expected boxes of clothes and maybe some kitchen things. What pulled up was a full truck, furniture, a 65-inch television, Claudine's home office setup, a standing rack of her clothes that needed its own space. "We thought, since you have the room," Nate said and trailed off. I said nothing. I helped carry boxes. I gave them the 2nd largest bedroom, which had its own ensuite. My room, mine and Ray's room, was at the end of the hall, and I kept it. That felt non-negotiable at the time, though I couldn't have told you why. Some instinct. The first few weeks were actually fine. Claudine cooked twice, elaborate meals with ingredients she got delivered from a meal kit service, which I later found out she was charging to a credit card I'd agreed to let Nate use for household expenses. I didn't know that yet. I made Sunday dinners. We watched television together sometimes. It felt like family. It was around week 5 that I came downstairs one morning and found my armchair gone from the living room. Not moved. Gone. Replaced by a larger sectional sofa that I didn't recognize. Claudine was in the kitchen with her coffee. "Oh, I hope you don't mind," she said before I could speak. "That chair was really cramping the flow. I found a sectional on Facebook Marketplace, much better for the space." "Where is my chair?" I said. "I had Nate put it in the basement. It's totally fine down there." I went to the basement. It's totally fine down there. My chair, a wingback I'd had for 15 years that Ray used to read in, was sitting next to the water heater. I brought it back upstairs myself, one corner at a time, and put it in my bedroom. I didn't say anything to Claudine about it. Looking back, I understand now that this was the moment. This was when I should have said, "We need to talk about what is and isn't yours to move." But I didn't. I told myself she was young. I told myself she was trying to make it feel like home. I told myself Nate needed this to work, so I said nothing, and she learned what my silence meant. Over the next 3 months, the house shifted in ways that were hard to pin down individually, but added up to something I can only describe as occupation. The entry closet, where I kept my coat and boots, and the recycling bags, was reorganized so that Claudine's coats were at the front. The kitchen spice rack was replaced with a magnetic wall strip she'd ordered on mine. My old spices in the back of a cupboard I could barely reach. A print I'd hung in the hallway, a watercolor of Lake Huron that my sister had painted, was taken down and put in the basement. A large photographic print of a bridge in Copenhagen, somewhere neither of them had ever been, went up in its place. The watercolor was a bit dated, Claudine said when I asked. My sister painted that, I thought. I didn't say it. I went to the basement and wrapped the watercolor in a sheet and kept it under my bed. I started keeping notes. I don't know exactly when I started, but at some point I got a small spiral notebook, green, from the dollar store, and I started writing things down. Not because I had a plan, just because I needed somewhere to put it. All this low-grade wrongness that I couldn't yet name. April 12th, Claudine ordered a new kitchen table, did not ask. The old one, mine, 20 years, oak, is in the garage. April 19, grocery delivery, 357. Nate says they'll pay me back. Green notebook. May 3, Claudine told her friend on the phone, "We gutted the upstairs bathroom." She bought a new shower curtain and some shelves from IKEA. I was not consulted. May 17th, Nate's business. $4,000. He said it would take 2 months. Green notebook. The bedroom happened in June. Claudine came to me one evening while I was on the porch with my tea. She sat down across from me in Ray's old chair. She'd started using it without asking, and she folded her hands in her lap like she was about to tell me someone had died. "Judith," she said, "I want to talk to you about something a bit sensitive." I recognized the tone. It was her negotiation voice. She explained that her home office setup wasn't working in the second bedroom. She needed more space for calls, a proper background for video meetings, room for her equipment. She'd been looking at the layout of the house and thought that the master bedroom, my room, would actually be perfect. More natural light, separate from Nate's office space, quiet end of the hall. "And you barely use it except for sleeping," she said. "The room at the back is honestly just as nice. Cozy. You'd probably love it." The room at the back was the smallest bedroom. It had one window that faced the fence. Ray and I had used it for storage. "That's my room," I said. "I know, and I completely respect that," she said. "I'm just asking you to consider." "That's my room," I said again. She smiled with her mouth only. "Of course, totally fine." She asked again 3 weeks later, through Nate this time. He came to me on a Sunday morning with coffee, which was how I knew it was coming. "Mom," he said, "it would really help Claudine's work situation. It's just a room." "It's not just a room," I said. "Dad's been gone over a year," he said, not cruelly, just saying it, and there it was. I sat with my coffee and felt something in me go quiet, the way things go quiet when you know you're about to do something you'll regret, but can't find the words to stop it. I moved into the back bedroom. I moved Ray's things too. His reading glasses, the watch he'd left on the nightstand, the paperback with his bookmark still in it. I put them in a box and put the box on the shelf in the back room's small closet. I cried once, by myself, with the closet door closed. Claudine converted my bedroom into her home office within the week. She bought a new desk, a ring light, a bookcase with matching baskets. She sent me a photo of it on iMessage with a smiley face. I did not respond. I want to talk about the money because I think it matters, and I think people need to understand what financial helping actually looks like when it goes wrong. In the first year, I gave Nate $4,000 for the business, then $2,500 for a van repair. I paid $800 for car insurance when Claudine said they were short. I covered the full cost of groceries, roughly $900 to $1,100 a month, because we'd agreed they would contribute when they could. I bought Claudine a winter coat for her birthday, $280, because Nate told me she needed one, and I was her family now. There was also the credit card. I'd added Nate to an account for household things. By month 14, the balance was $11,400. When I looked at the statements, really looked, line by line, about $6,000 of it was not household things. Spa visits, a weekend in Niagara-on-the-Lake, clothing, a KitchenAid mixer that was in their bedroom. I didn't confront Nate about the statements, not yet. I photographed every page, front and back, dated them, and put them in a folder at the back of my filing cabinet. The green notebook had grown to 2 notebooks by this point. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't brave enough yet to plan anything. But something in me had started to wake up, slowly, the way the feeling comes back into your hands in the cold. Slowly and then all at once, and a little bit painful. The dinner was in October. I'd been invited. I want to be precise about that word. Invited by my neighbor June to a small birthday gathering at my own dining room table. June was turning 65, her husband, and a few of their friends whom I'd known for years. I offered my house because it was bigger, and I had the dining room set that could seat 8. Claudine knew about it. Nate knew about it. I'd mentioned it 2 weeks earlier and put it in the shared household calendar app that Claudine had set up. Another thing I'd agreed to without quite knowing why. I cooked most of the day. I made a roasted vegetables, 2 pies. I set the table the way my mother taught me. Cloth napkins, the good dishes, candles. When June and the others arrived at 6:30, everything was ready. Claudine and Nate had come down earlier and said they'd just grab something in the kitchen and give us the room. I thought that was settled. At 7:15, Claudine walked into the dining room. She'd changed clothes. She was carrying a glass of wine. She pulled out the chair at the end of the table. Ray's old chair at the head of the table. Ray's old chair at the head, and sat down. I looked at her. "We actually decided to join," she said, as though the decision had been made by committee. June looked at me. I smiled, the automatic smile, the one you do when you're trying to keep things smooth. 15 minutes later, I got up to get the bread from the kitchen, and when I came back, my chair, where I had been sitting, was occupied. Claudine's friend had arrived, apparently, and taken it. Claudine had not said anything. There were no spare chairs at the table. I stood there with the bread basket. Claudine looked up at me, and then she said it. "Oh, nobody actually invited you to sit here, did they?" She laughed a little. "There's a chair in the kitchen, Judith. Just drag it in." Juna's face went still. The table went quiet in that particular way where everyone is looking at their plate. I put the bread basket on the table. I didn't drag a chair from the kitchen. I walked down the hall to the back bedroom, sat on the edge of the narrow bed, and I looked at the wall for a long time. I wasn't crying. I was thinking. I was thinking about the watercolor under the bed, about Ray's paperback with the bookmark still in it, about the green notebooks, about the credit card statements in the filing cabinet, about every single thing I had let pass because I thought love meant silence. I thought, I am done being silent in my own house. I waited until they were asleep. I'm not a confrontational person by nature. I want to be clear about that. What I did next didn't come from rage. It came from the kind of clarity that only arrives after a very long time of being patient past the point of reason. I went through my filing cabinet and took out the folder with the credit card statements. I took out the green notebooks. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and I wrote down a number, $23,400. That was my best estimate of what had gone out the door in 22 months. Cash, credit, groceries, gifts, incidentals. In the morning, while Claudine was still in my bedroom doing her morning calls and Nate was in the shower, I called my lawyer. Her name is irrelevant to this story, but she is sharp and practical and does not waste time. I told her everything. She did not sound surprised. You need to issue a formal notice of eviction, she said. They are classified as tenants under Ontario tenancy law, even without a lease, because they have been in residence over 12 months. The process takes time, but we start today. I also told her about the credit card. She said that was a separate matter and that I had options. We filed the notice, 30 days. I did not tell Nate and Claudine that I'd spoken to a lawyer. I did not tell them that papers were being prepared. I went about the next 3 days quietly, normally, making coffee in the morning and asking Nate how the work was going. On the 4th day, a registered letter arrived. I signed for it at the door. I brought it inside and set it on the kitchen counter and went to the living room. Nate opened it. I heard him go quiet. Then I heard Claudine's voice, high and sharp, and then Nate's lower. Then footsteps. He came to the living room doorway. "Mom," he said, "what is this?" "It's a formal notice," I said. 30 days. You can't." Claudine started from behind him. "I can," I said. "And I am." What followed was loud and lasted about 20 minutes. Claudine said I was vindictive. She said I had always resented her. She said I'd been jealous of what she and Nate had. She said she had rights. "You have 30 days of rights," I said. "I suggest you start looking." Nate said very little during this. He sat on the couch with his hands between his knees and looked at the floor. That was hard to watch. That was the hardest part. They left after 27 days. Took the sectional, the Copenhagen bridge print, the KitchenAid mixer. Left behind, intentionally I think, a number of things that were mine. My watercolors still in the basement, the wingback chair still in the basement, the oak kitchen table now relegated to the garage. Left those as a kind of message, maybe. Here is everything you value that we didn't. I brought them all back inside. I also consulted the lawyer about the credit card. Given the amount, over $11,000 in charges I could demonstrate were personal and unauthorized, she said I had grounds to pursue repayment through small claims court. I filed. Claudine responded through her own representative, initially disputing the claim. At the hearing, which took place the following March at a courthouse in Stratford, the judge reviewed my documentation, 22 months of itemized expenses, photograph statements, the green notebooks. My lawyer had prepared a detailed summary. Claudine's representative argued the charges were shared household expenses and that I had consented. The judge disagreed. I was awarded $9,200, which accounted for the personal charges and legal costs. Not everything, but enough. And the process of saying it out loud in a room designed for saying hard things out loud, that mattered more than the number. Nate called me 8 weeks after they moved out. Claudine and he had separated. He didn't say much about why. Not that first call. Just that it hadn't been working for a while and that the eviction had made something clear to him that had been blurry for a long time. I didn't ask what. I just listened. He came to Stratford for a weekend in early spring. We sat on the porch, and I made tea, and we watched the maple tree, which was just starting to bud. Neither of us mentioned the dinner. Neither of us mentioned the bedroom. We talked about his dad, which we hadn't done properly in almost 2 years. At some point he said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have said something." "Yes," I said. "You should have." That's all I said, because he knew, and I knew, and the maple tree had buds on it, and it was April in Stratford, and some things don't need more words than that. I'm telling this story because I have thought a lot about the woman I was on that November afternoon in 2021, standing on the porch watching a moving truck in my driveway, feeling relieved. I wasn't wrong to love my son. I wasn't wrong to want to help. I was wrong to believe that love required me to disappear, room by room, chair by chair, until there was nothing of me left in my own house but a box of my husband's things in a back closet. My name is on the deed. My husband is in the maple tree. My sister painted the watercolor that is now, again, hanging in the hallway where it belongs. There is a particular kind of quiet in the house that is yours again, not empty quiet, not lonely quiet, the kind that has room in it, the kind that sounds, when you listen, like yourself. I didn't raise my voice that night at the dinner table. I didn't throw anything. I went to the back bedroom, and I sat on the edge of a narrow bed, and I decided that silence, from that point forward, would no longer be something I gave away for free. Some lessons take longer than they should. That one took me 2 years. But it's mine now, and I'm keeping it. The green notebook is still on my shelf. I don't open it anymore, but I haven't thrown it away either. There's something I want to remember about the woman who filled those pages. Not because she was wise, but because she was trying to find her way back to herself, one quiet entry at a time. And I think that matters. I've thought a lot about why it took me so long. Not to judge myself. I'm past that. But because I think the honest answer is worth saying. I didn't lose my home all at once. I lost it in small concessions, each one reasonable enough on its own. The chair in the basement, the spices in the back cupboard, the watercolor wrapped in a sheet. Every time I said nothing, I was making a choice, and I told myself it was kindness. Looking back, I think some of it was fear. Fear of conflict, fear of losing Nate, fear that if I named what was happening, it would become real, and I'd have to do something about it. What Claudine understood, before I did, is that silence is a resource. She borrowed against mine for almost 2 years. The thing about consequences is that they don't announce themselves. They accumulate. Every time she moved something of mine without asking, there was no immediate disaster. Every time Nate looked at the floor instead of at me, nothing collapsed. But underneath all of it, something was being built. A record. A pattern. A case. I was building it without fully knowing I was building it. The notebook, the photograph statements, the careful dates. Something in me knew, even when my voice didn't. What I understand now is that it takes a certain kind of clear-eyed honesty to see your own situation as it actually is, not as you wish it were. That's harder than it sounds when the person taking advantage of you is someone your son loves, someone you let into your home because you wanted to help. Clarity isn't comfortable. It asks you to stop making excuses for other people's behavior and start telling the truth about your own. That took me longer than it should have. And then it takes something else to act on what you see. Not anger. Anger burns fast and makes bad decisions. What I found that night after the dinner, sitting on the edge of that narrow bed, was something quieter and more durable than anger. A decision. I was going to stop waiting for things to get better on their own and start doing the specific, methodical work of getting my life back. the lawyer call, the file folder, the small claims hearing. None of it felt dramatic. It felt like finally respecting myself enough to be inconvenient. Nate came back. That matters, and I don't take it lightly. But I want to be honest, I didn't call the lawyer for Nate. I called her for the woman who put the watercolor under the bed and cried with the closet door closed. That woman deserved someone fighting for her. It turned out the only person available for the job was me. The maple tree has its leaves back. It's a good summer for it.